Hey everyone. Hot topic of safety and riding safer in these group rides. I know we're still early in the season, and I took about an hour and threw together a PowerPoint with some motion to give some examples of being safer on the bike. I think there's a few of us that really want to see these rides be safer, and some people that think they're riding safe, but unknowingly they are not. I know that nobody is perfect, but it's a good goal to have, to try to always make these rides safe. Something that is really difficult when talking about safety is really giving an example. It's hard to stand in a parking lot or be riding down a road and tell somebody they did something unsafe, because quite often they don't know that it was unsafe. If they did know, they wouldn't have done it to start with. And then just the heat of the moment, the way people usually come across when they're trying to explain it, it's just difficult. So I thought I would take a little bit of time and, like I said, make this PowerPoint and try to give some examples so that people can think through what they're doing and maybe make some wiser decisions as they're going down the road. So, pardon me for any missteps or having to back up in the video or in the PowerPoint slides. I'm going to try to do this in one pass. So, here we go. In this first slide, I'm just showing the correct way. The correct way to go down the road 2x2, taking up as little room as possible, approximately 3 bikes wide. The distance between the riders, about the width of another road bike, another person. And as you can see, I'll move the mouse over here. The driver actually has the ability to see down the road and see past the group. And they've got an idea of what they're about to do. That's a huge advantage for them and a huge safety advantage for us as a group. So we can put that car in motion. They can go across the center line and come back. And because the group's also 2x2, it cuts the distance that car has to travel in half. As you can see with the 5-rider length, obviously faster to pass 5 riders than it is 10. And to really do it safe, they need to go either over the yellow line or give the 3-foot distance. So again, to point out, the driver can see past everybody. They know where they're going to try to put their vehicle, and everything being uniform is going to just allow them a smooth transition to the front. So jump into the next slide. When you get cyclists spread out, you get into a situation where the car may have to drive for hundreds of meters or even miles, down the road, almost bouncing in and out of cyclists. So in this example, with traffic going the other way, there's just really no hope of that car giving 3 feet. In our mind, we would, a lot of people would say, oh, that car never should have passed. Well, the reality is they do pass. People don't always follow the law. They rarely follow the law. We know that. We see it every time we're out on the road. And cyclists in general, we're not doing our best quite often to in the give and take relationship with the road and other vehicles and other cyclists. So again, there's no way that car is going to cross the yellow line. Very likely you're not going to get 3 feet. I would rather use the word block that car. I would rather be riding 2x2, creating a situation where that car can wait and then go around. I know there could be some argument there with lack of better term by using the word block, but the reality is 2x2 is legal, and it's almost always safer. So then you also have the situation where a car leapfrogs. A car is bouncing in and out of the cyclists. Now what happens here is the car really is not used to driving around cyclists. When you have cyclists going 12 to 25 miles an hour, and a car that really desires, 40 to 60, depending on what road we're on, as they bounce in and out of the bikes, they really don't know how quickly they're coming up on that next cyclist. So it almost turns into a swerving situation where they're bouncing or swerving in and out of these bikes. So jumping on to the next one here. This happens on almost every group ride that I'm around. This is something that in motorcycle schools, motorcycle license, they really preach against this. And it's when people ride off the front or they ride off the back, it blocks the view. You don't know that person's up there. So this car is behind the group, and they see up the road, and they also see a really uniform group of people, but there's this person off the front. And the issue is when they pull out, the pillars on their car, the sun, all kinds of variables come into play that can block their view of that rider off the front. So just imagine, when I mention the pillars, you can see my mouse here, the amount of blind spots that we have on cars, and the fact that they're looking at this group, they're looking at the lane that they're going into, there can be sunlight, there's so many variables. They might be looking for their buddy that they know rides bicycles. They might be staring right into this group. We hope they're not, but that, again, is the reality of what we're up against on the road. So when they come around, they're going to see this whole group. They're going to believe they're past that group. And this person who decided to ride off the front and just sit out there 3-4 bike lengths ahead is really putting themselves at risk. So move on to the next. So you have two groups, and when you have the leapfrogging, this bouncing in and out of the bikes, again, as I mentioned earlier with the leapfrogging scenario, they cannot judge their speed. That car can accelerate, very quickly compared to us. Quite often, if they speed up to 45 and they don't realize that we're going 15 or 20, they pull back in. They don't realize how hard they have to hit the brakes to make their car fit in that gap. So, just as you can see or as you can imagine, they pull out. There's a group up here all of a sudden. There could have been an oncoming car that, forces them to pull into that group. It's just a really, again, a dangerous situation that could be so easily prevented if the groups would just tighten up a little bit. One group either needs to slow down for a little bit or speed up for a few seconds and just get back in that draft. So this one, this is just all too common. This is the number one formation that you see going down the road. This mass of riders blocking the view. There's just no way. You don't know how long this group is. You don't know how fast I shouldn't say really how fast, but how big the gaps are going to be as you pull out to go around them. You've got riders off the front. So they're at risk, just like our last slide. You've got riders three riders wide. The driver, is just seeing 50 shades of lycra here, blocking their view. It might as well be camouflage. So the odds that they're going to know what they're getting into are very low. It's just a real mess with this scenario. And again, this is just the most common scenario. So just imagine, again, you got all these blind spots. You got distractions inside the car. You got the distractions of not knowing if these riders are swerving, if they're going to get over. Again, maybe this is somebody's looking for their friend because they know their friend at work rides. Who knows? We'll see that again. Out and around, Not sure what they're getting into. Easily hitting the people off the front. So another scenario, massive riders. You know, there's really just no formation at all. It could be any variable, but they're blocking the road. They're riding right up to the center line because they firmly believe that they have the right to the road. And yeah, we do have a certain right to the road, but again, we need to be safe also and not create situations with panicked drivers. People behind the wheel 15, 20 seconds out of their life to wait for the next intersection is just way too long for people nowadays. I don't believe it, but that's the drivers we're working with. So, as you can see, I wrote at the notes, such potential for oncoming traffic. They see more bikes. They thought they were going to have the opportunity to get over, and here comes a car. That car is either head on with them. Hopefully they slow down. That other car could have panicked and swerved into the other lane and taken out an entire group of cyclists. Heavily based on the fact that we're not riding in a formation, allowing them to see down the road. So this one, I mentioned earlier about motorcycle tests. This one is one that you'll see in motorcycle handbooks, and it's stragglers off the back. It's people that are riding at angles that makes it difficult for cars to see. So you can see a group in motion, and then you have the two riders in the back. Well, that car is quite often, they're in such a hurry to pull out. They're going to see that group, but they're not going to see the people at the wrong angles. So seeing that again, everybody goes by. They see the last of those riders on the right-hand side of the road, the bottom of the screen, and they just start to take off. So easy to make that mistake. Easily preventable if they would just ride up and continue riding 2 by 2. The car is going to look at those cyclists. I move my mouse here. The car is going to see the cyclists in this lane of bikes, and that's where we want to have this rider in the back. So, along with the formation, it's trying to keep formation. I've got a picture of one rider here. In reality, it would be, this rider moving over and then back. Not taking up, or I should say not crossing the center line. No need to cross the center line. All of these people in the back of this group are over to the side. There's no risk that they need to swerve or get out of the way. They don't need to move into the other lane. Very simple that rider can go to the back, and then they could move over and get right into the back of the group, and they can take a break. Allow somebody else to do a little bit of work on the front. So on here I wrote that this is the correct way, but I also wrote it's debatably unsafe just because the amount of width of road it takes. Quite often this would be better on a really wide county road where the riders in the front can work their way to the back together at the same time, usually with a decent amount of speed going down the road so that the riders are more toward the middle and probably doing a little bit better job of talking to each other and knowing where each other's at as they carry the speed. And I say knowing where each other's at just because if a car were to come, there would be benefit to everybody knowing that a car was going to make a pass, and the whole group could shift over just a little bit. Or again, with it being a county road, might not be any need to. The vehicle could probably go right around them. So we'll jump on to the next. So in this case, I should have wrote half wheeling, but this is just a classic case of riders that are riding staggered, half wheeling, riding halfway up the next guy's wheel, whether it's halfway up the wheel or halfway up the bike. These riders, you shouldn't have to know that there's somebody riding off your back corner. You should be able to worry about what's in front of you as you go down the road. And I don't have any motion in this slide, but any one of these riders could get into a situation where they need to move toward the other riders. The rider in the front here may need to go a little bit to their left, and this rider may need to go a little bit to their right. And you can just see the domino effect that happens back through the group. Very few exit strategies for people to work with. So then I wrote another one here, just lane hogging, just using the whole road. If there was a car back here in the back, where my mouse is at, their line of sight up the road would be blocked, just creating more issues, unneeded issues. There's no reason to be feet apart. Really need to, if you're not comfortable riding in a straight line, you need to try to get comfortable riding in a straight line. Kind of judge yourself as you go down the road. Don't fixate your vision. Don't stare at things. You can pick a point and ride to it, but don't sit there and try to ride on a white line or on a yellow line. Quite often you'll find out that all those little corrections work against you, and you're actually swerving a lot more. So look up the road. Looking up the roads, when you'll see potholes, you'll see people's driveway gravel coming out onto the asphalt, that type of thing. You'll see traffic, dogs. You'll just see so much more. Look up the road, and the bicycle will smooth out underneath you. So that's the end of it. Hopefully you learned a little bit. You can see maybe a little bit of why there's frustration. Something I didn't touch on in here is that really quite often, and a key reason I think that people get so unhappy or offended or defensive, I don't know the right word, but really been out of shape with the safety thing, is it seems like it's not the person that did the unsafe move that so often can cause the whole group to get into trouble. If you're going over a hill and you're riding on the center line, there's a good chance the car is going to swerve toward the ditch, but that's when you get into the overcorrecting situations. And yeah, the car might have missed the first person that was riding incorrectly, but when they overcorrect and they swerve back across the road into the whole group, those type of scenarios, we're looking to avoid all of these scenarios, dangerous scenarios, but that's why you hear some people get so aggravated over safety and just wanting to ride in a nice uniform group down the road. So thanks for listening. Hope it made sense. I'm sure I'll refine this in the future. Maybe make some notes ahead of time. And there you go. Thanks for listening.